Hi guys, today we're going to see how a computer game interface can be used for robot teleoperation. The material of this video is taken from a set of research papers that were written in collaboration with Fredrik, Sergio, Peter, Patrick, Martin, Nils, Nanja, Mark, and Ramvias. And if you want more details about the stuff we talk about, you should feel free to look into these papers. So, teleoperation of search and rescue robots is a difficult task. So imagine you have a robot like this and you want to investigate a building like this after, say, an earthquake or a terrorist attack or after a fire. So before sending in human responders, you might want to drive a robot like this into the building and see how badly damaged the structure is and if there's any human victims in there that needs to be rescued before, say, the building collapses or something else happens. So these missions are time critical. Fire spread and kills. Buildings can collapse, such as in this example. Bombs can detonate if it's a terrorist attack of some kind, or someone put a bomb on a timer somewhere. You need to get there and get rid of it before it detonates. So time is critical, and then you might ask, can we save time? And a connected question is, what is it that takes time during such missions? And it turns out that situational awareness takes time. This might be a surprise. So situational awareness takes time. So what is situational awareness? Well, it's the operator's understanding of the UGV environment. And UGV would be the unmanned ground vehicle. That is our robot. So this is kind of a control loop here. We have the situational awareness here. The user perceives the environment of the robot, understands what happens, projects into the future consequences of possible actions, then makes a decision, takes an action, something happens, and we reassess the situation to get new awareness and take a new decision, and so on. So this is kind of the loop of action, decision, and awareness. So situation awareness takes time, I said. Well, there's a number of results in the research literature that supports this statement. So, for instance, the mission pace is limited by operator's situational awareness, not robot speed, as was noted in this PhD thesis. The entire reference is going to appear towards the end of the video if you want to check the details there as well. And another research paper, actually two different papers, it was estimated that between 30 and 50% of mission time is spent on situational awareness. So if we want to save time and situational awareness takes time, the question is, can we improve the situational awareness of the operator? One observation you might do is that the UGV, that is a robot operator interface, is very similar to a game interface. You have some kind of gamepad with buttons and sticks on it, and you have a video feed, and you need to control this entity. In Teleoperation, it's a real robot, and in a computer game, it's obviously a virtual character, but you have the same interface. And this was also noted before. Urban search and rescue possesses most of the same characteristics as a successful computer game, noted by Maxwell, and a video game-based framework for analyzing human-robot interaction was proposed by Richer and Dryery in this paper. So how are video games controlled? If we're going to gain inspiration from video games control, you might first ask, how are they controlled? And then how are UGVs controlled? And the core point of this video is that we're going to propose a way to control robots in the same way as video game characters are controlled. So let's start with something called tank control. That is the standard UGV control mode. So you have a gamepad as before, you have two sticks, and the left stick controls translation of the main robot body, the tracks here, going forwards, backwards, and turning by assigning different speeds to the left and right tracks. And then the right stick controls the camera mount up here, turning in different directions to see different things. So it looks kind of like this. You have the robot turning left, turning right, going forwards and backwards. This is the left stick. And then you can move the camera with the other stick. So this is fairly natural for tracked robots. You have one stick for the tracks and another stick to control the pan tilt camera. Yes. So computer games, or most computer games I would say, use something called free look control, not tank control. It's a standard game control mode for first-person shooters, for instance Fortnite, that kind of looks like this. So in video games, translation and rotation are decoupled and controlled by separate sticks. I think most computer gamers haven't thought about it in terms of translation and rotation being decoupled, but that's what it is. The left stick controls translation. If you move the left stick, this dude is going to move either right or left or forwards towards the building or backwards away from the building. Whereas the right stick over here controls rotation. So by just moving the right stick, this dude is going to look up, down, right, left, but not move, instead standing still in the same spot. So that's translation and rotation being decoupled and controlled with the separate sticks. So just to illustrate how this, the difference here, we're going to see two different cases. The tank control on the left, and here we actually illustrate it by a computer game. So there are some computer games that are controlled using tank control. So in this case, it's Resident Evil, a somewhat old computer game by this time. So as you can see here, the player is moving around, but note that the player is never moving right or left. Instead, he's turning and going forwards and backwards. So avoiding these fireballs right here, the player actually needs to back up and turn and then move out of the way of the fireball. No motion left-right for this guy. So let's compare this to Fortnite here on the right, where free look control is used. There's a lot of right and left motion going on here in order to peek out behind obstacles and also moving left and right to make it harder to be hit by your opponents. So these are two examples of tank control and free look control, both from the video game community. Right now, robots are controlled using tank control, but can we change that? So tank control is standard for robots, whereas we want the new robots to be controlled with free look control. So again, can we use free look control on tracked robots? It would be nice. Computer games use it, at least most of the computer games. Can it be done? So can this guy, the robot up here, move like this guy, the game character down there? So just to illustrate the robot once again moving, and the computer game, you see there's lots of right and left motion by the computer game. And the thing is, the robot has tracks, so it can turn on the spot, but it can't really move to the sides. So can the UGV move sideways? No, it can't. It has tracks. But can the camera move sideways? We note that the camera is what provides the video feed. And in fact, the camera can move sideways. So if we look at this video here on the bottom, we notice that actually here the camera is going straight and then going right and then going straight forwards again. So the camera can move to the sideways, to the sides, even though the vehicle in itself cannot. But by turning the vehicle and having the camera mounted somewhat off center, we can have the camera move sideways and therefore provide an illusion, well, actually provide the camera of moving in any direction we want. Decoupling, rotation, and translation just in the computer game. So hopefully this will be useful. So just to illustrate once more how this would work, we have this actual robot where we implemented this. So you see here that there's a lot of translation here. There's not much rotation on the camera, but the translations are done in left, right, and forward, backwards motions here. And then there's some rotation right here. There was some rotation earlier too, but they are in fact decoupled. So how, you might ask, how do we achieve this decoupling? Well, it's a control theory trick called feedback linearization. It was proposed in a paper some 20 years ago by Lawton for multi-agent control purposes, but now we're using it for teleoperation. And the drawback is that it hides the orientation of the chassis of the robot, and thereby providing a possible collision risk. So as we can see in these two videos here, we saw this illustration earlier. This is the real robot in the bottom video. Let's see if we can get the bottom video. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the real robot is again from kind of an above angle doing this kind of forwards motion, moving to the right, then moving backwards, and in the smallest video feed you can see the camera feed actually, and there you see that there's not much translation going on. Sorry, not that much rotation going on. It's translating kind of forwards and then to the right and then backwards and so on. And the possible, as we noted, the possible drawback here is when controlling it, it feels like a computer game, it moves like a computer game, but you're actually hiding the motion of the main body of the robot. So if it's a very cluttered environment, you might have collisions there. So, but wait, you might exclaim here. Feedback linearization is sensitive to modeling errors. It involves some mathematical computation with inverting some effects of some parts of the dynamics, and if you have modeling error, you're not going to be canceling dynamics properly, and it's not going to work. And obviously in a tracked robot you're going to have lots of slippage that is not perfectly captured by mathematics. So will it still work? Well, we saw in the videos that it worked pretty well, and now we're going to see a terrain video over here with lots of uneven terrain, lots of slippage. But as you can see, we're still able to control rotation and translation separately. There's lots of slippage right here. But it still works. The decoupling still works, and the reason for why the slippage does not kill the effect, but it still works, is that we added a rate gyro and a Kalman filter to filter out noise and to cancel slippage effects and measure the true rotation that we actually achieve on the body. So that's pretty neat. So let's remind ourselves with the purpose here. The purpose is to improve situational awareness in robot operations. Situational awareness is a key success factor in most games. It is also a key success factor in robot teleoperation. So therefore there's a reason to believe that in these computer games where situational awareness is actually really good, so if you're supposed to play these games and achieve good results, you need situational awareness. You need to understand where you are, where the opponents are, what's going on around you, and so on. And good players achieve this, so that's the rationale for believing that this might actually work for robots as well. So, but beyond just arguing that this should be a good idea, we actually tested if it works, if it actually works, if you could get better results by allowing operators to use this. So this is to illustrate the user study we did. We had 16 participants. They were moving around in this virtual environment here, looking for markers. So there's a marker on the wall right there. So looking for markers, try to find as many as possible in a given time using the two control modes, freeload control and the tank control. And we also tested another task that was path following these white lines in the road, avoiding moving obstacles, static obstacles, and so on, and trying to complete the path as fast as possible, not bumping into objects, and also not taking shortcuts, as is illustrated here. This is part of the instruction videos for the 16 participants of the study, and try to be fast. So we did the study, we measured the outcome, and the results were as follows. So the advantages of FLC and the advantages of tank control were as follows. For FLC, more objects were found. As you can see here, FLC is on the left and tank control is on the right here in red. So for FLC, we had on average about 6 objects found, whereas for tank control, we had an average of 4.5 about. These are standard deviation bars here. There was also less mental workload. It's a bit stressful to control robots like this. So the RSME here is a way to measure mental workload. And as you can see, we had 50 on this scale for FLC and somewhere about 65 for tank control. So higher for tank control. Less mental workload for FLC. Somewhat faster navigation, but the differences were bigger for the exploration, searching for object tasks. That's why we show these here. There was more use of the camera motor using FLC. A lot of the tank control missions, the user just left the camera facing forwards and then they rotated the whole robot to look towards the sides. And for exploration, FLC was preferred by 75% of the subjects, which is pretty good. So tank control advantages were actually not found statistically significant, but the kind of advantages that we could still see, but were very small, was that there were somewhat less collisions. And this was kind of what we expected, since we're hiding the orientation of the main robot body. So again, tank control is probably the best option if you're moving in extremely cluttered environments. So the story might end there with a new control mode for teleoperation inspired by gaming. But there's actually another problem in teleoperation where we can make use of gaming experience, and that is network connectivity. So obviously teleoperation needs connectivity. If you're moving a robot through a building and all of a sudden you lose connection with the robot, well, you can't command the robot to do anything, and you don't get any video feedback. So you don't know what the robot sees, and you can't tell it to do anything. So basically the robot is lost. So that's a bad thing, right? So what do you do when the signal is weak, but you need to keep searching? So imagine you're in this situation here. Instead of having 75% of signal strength, or 3 out of 4 bars, or whatever you measure by, if this number goes down to, say, 2 or something, then what do you do? What direction of motion are safe? So if you have a 2 over here, what do? Can you go forwards? Can you go left? Can you go right? Imagine you really would like to do some more exploration to see if there are victims there or not. But you still don't want to lose your robot, because then you can't do any more exploration and find any more victims. The inspiration we use here is also from video games. So this is a very old video game here. There's some monster guy shooting at you here, and these two red bars are there to indicate that you're being shot from the front. Obviously, this you can notice this by just looking at the video feed, but if someone is shooting you from the back or from the side, it's not that obvious. But then if you were shot from the back, you would have some red bars down here, and from the side you would have some red bars over here. So if someone is shooting you from the side, it makes sense to kind of turn left and face them, or jump into cover or whatever. Either way, this signal, the red bars here, gives you a direction of threat. And we would like, we think it's a good idea to use a similar concept of providing the direction of the signal strength increase and decrease. So like this, we provide a colored bar around the video feed here, or a colored frame, I'd say. So green here means going left is totally fine. Signal strength is probably going to increase. Going forwards and backwards, you have more yellow-greenish here, meaning that it's probably okay. It's not going to improve, but it's not going to worsen. And then yellow-brownish here means it's going to worsen if you move right. So even if you have a very low number, if you have this information, you know that it's fine to go left, and probably fine to go forwards and backwards. So just to illustrate this once again, this is a top view of some environment. So in situation A, you're facing into a room, and this is what you see in situation A. You have green up here, so that means going forwards is perfectly fine. A bit green on the sides, left and right is fine. Going backwards here is going to reduce your signal strength. In situation A, in situation B, you're facing this way down the corridor, and then you have green here behind you, so going backwards is totally fine. Going forwards is going to reduce signal strength, and the right and left is somewhere in between. So we did a user study again to compare these interfaces. The interface on the left, where you actually are provided information of what the signal strength, how the signal strength is going to change if you move in different directions, with the standard interface where you're just given these bars and the number of what the signal strength is right now. So again, we had an exploration task. We checked the number of symbols found. And it turned out that with this direction of arrival thingy, we had more symbols found than with the standard that we call bar here. And we were also able to operate on a higher level of signal strength overall with the direction of arrival information, the new interface, than the old one. So looking at the big picture, we have two IDs here. Now we're going to come back to this free look control thingy. The big picture in terms of game interface history. It turned out, well, we saw an example of a game using tank control, and tank control was actually standard for the first 4 years of first-person shooter history. So from Doom to Quake, tank control was standard. And then in Quake 1, free look control was added as an option, and in Quake 2, free look control was the default, and tank control was an option. And then from then on, free look control was the only option basically in almost all games. So free look control today, it's used in 99% of the first-person shooter games. There are some exceptions. And those, the first-person shooter games, is roughly 1/4 of the world markets. So that means we have hundreds of millions of trained users. So user instruction for a robot, beyond the fact that this is probably a good idea to control robots, you don't have to explain how it works. You just tell someone it works like Fortnite, and then they're good to go. At least if they tried Fortnite, but then most people did, right? So we have shown in this video and in the research that free look control for teleoperation of robots works in real life, and it improves performance. So the take-home message is to use it. But before we finish here, you might ask, what about Resident Evil? We said almost all computer games use free look control. Resident Evil does not. So why is that? That question was actually asked to the producer, Jun Takushi, and the response is as follows. I think that by imposing certain restrictions on the player, you actually help to heighten the fear and the tension, and ultimately, you create a better horror game. But then again, fear and tension, is that what we want for teleoperators of search and rescue robots? If someone's life is in danger, you don't want more fear and tension, you want less, right? So this is a list of references if you want to go into details here about the stuff we talked about. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.